tuning in to my Playroom series. This is video number 3, where I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I mounted the ceiling slide for the big barn door that I have behind me. This was a massive barn door for me. It was 64 inches wide by 78 inches tall, and we had some problems with installing it here. I really wanted a barn door here. I have since we moved in, and so I wanted to figure out a way to make it work, but we have this ductwork that runs along the ceiling here, which dropped down my space for the barn door, and it also didn't leave me with any headroom here where you normally connect your barn door hardware. And so I had to do some research and find a slide that would mount to the ceiling, which I did. I found it at Accuride.com, and they were nice enough to send me out their 115 RC slide, which is a ceiling mount slide, and it can hold a pretty fair amount of weight, which I calculated out when I was doing this design. I really wanted this door to be lightweight so that my little kids could push and pull and it wouldn't come crashing down on them. And I wanted it to be something like so that it wouldn't put a lot of pressure on the cross pieces along in here, the studs that are in the ceiling. And so it was kind of tricky for me. When they sent out their slide, the slide is very impressive. I really like the way that it works, but it didn't come with any hardware. So I had no way of knowing how to attach the cassettes to the wood piece or the barn door itself. So I had to figure that out on my own, and I'll take you along with me and show you how I did it. It did work out really well. I'm happy with it, but I think if I had to do it again, I would go up a step in their series to the 116. And it's just capable of holding a lot more weight. It's a little more robust of a system, but I really do like this one and it works out fine. So anyway, stay tuned and I'll show you how I did it, how I put all these pieces together and made the ceiling slide lightweight barn door work. Okay, the first thing I did was run to the hardware store to grab an angle bar, which I would use to attach the cassettes to the top of the wooden door. I grabbed a couple other things like lag bolts, some nuts and washers, and then I used these Power Pro number 8 2-inch screws to attach the track to the ceiling. So the Accuride track is 1.5 inches wide, so I needed to mark 3/4 of an inch out from my molding, and that would be the center of the track. And then my molding is about 1/2 inch thick, so I went where the wall was and measured 1 1/4 inches out. Here's my track. It was going to be tricky to get this attached to the ceiling, so I grabbed this double-sided tape to help me get it into place before I started drilling and screwing into the studs. Next, I flipped the 2 pieces of tracking over upside down, attached the double-sided tape, which would then help me line this up against my measurement along the wall. I had some trouble getting the longer track to stick because it was a little more heavy, so I had to add quite a few pieces of the double-sided tape to get this to stay into place in order to drill and screw it into the studs in the ceiling. I finally got it and could move on marking my studs with the stud finder. I used a drill bit that was made for metal, and this is an aluminum track. I drilled a hole where the studs were, and then I also used a metal countersink bit and then the Power Pro screws to get this into place. Because of the way the cassettes move along the track, those countersink bits are really important to keep the screws flush with the track so that the cassettes wouldn't catch at all when the door is moving back and forth. Also, make sure you have your safety glasses on. There's a lot of metal that flies around during this process and you want to protect your eyes. So I showed this a little bit before my stories about 2 weeks ago, before my life went crazy. But these are the casters or the cassettes that slide into the track system that I got from Accuride. So the trick was to figure out a way to attach this to a wooden door. Normally their doors are metal based or other materials, so they didn't really have an attachment system for this. But I picked up this L bracket from Lowe's, and I'm hoping to attach those brackets, I have 3 of them, these brackets to this metal, and then this metal I'll sink some T-bolts into the top here and bolt it on. That's the goal. Anyway, oh, wish me luck. So I started by attaching these cassettes to the angle bar there with some nuts and a washer, just to hold those into place and have them ready. And then I envisioned attaching this to the top of the door and sliding the entire door into place as a whole unit. However, sliding the door on proves to be much more difficult than anticipated, and I had to change things up. I'll explain more a little bit later. Here I am attaching the angle bar to the top of the wooden door. I use these 2 wooden screws, some 5/16 nuts, and some lag bolts that are 1.5 inches long. And then a 5/16 inch drill bit for the lag bolts. After attaching the cassettes to the angle bar, there was still about 1/4 inch spacing between the cassette screw and the top of the door. So I used these 5/16 inch bolts as a buffer between the door and the angle bar. So they would go in between the bar and the door, and the screw or lag bolt would go right through the middle. I started with the wood screws through the bolts, only to hold the bar in place while I did the lag bolts. Once the screws were holding the angle bar in place, I went ahead and drilled out where the lag bolts would go. And then I used one of these nut driver bits in order to screw the lag bolts into the door. The nut is still in between the angle bar and the door, and then the lag bolt went on the top of the angle bar. I went ahead and drilled those out, attached all the lag bolts, and stood the door up in place. Okay, now this is where things get a little bit tricky. I used some shims on the bottom of the drawer to try and level it out. This is what it looks like from behind. There's the bar from the behind with all the cassettes attached to the angle bar and then to the door. Trying to get this straight was really difficult, mostly because my ceiling is not level. It is not straight. In fact, it looks like a roller coaster. So trying to level this out and get it nice and straight in order to slide on was difficult. The first one broke, so then I decided to disconnect each cassette individually and slide the cassettes onto the bar themselves. Now these cassettes are made with steel ball bearings inside, so they come with a sleeve, and you line that up with the track and push them onto the track. It's a pretty cool setup and a pretty cool way to do a barn door. I really like it. It slides nice and smooth. So with those in place right in front of the closet, I put the door there and I kind of matched them up with the angle bar. And then I took my nuts and a wrench and I tightened and attached those directly. It was pretty difficult to do it this way, and I might change things up if I had to do it again, but it worked out perfectly and slides really well now. Once that was all attached with the nuts onto the angle bar and the cassettes, I could pull the shims out from the bottom of the door and it slid perfectly. All that's left is attaching the handle, so I brought my level out and my extra large handle that I found at Lowe's. This is a 12-inch handle. It actually came in satin nickel and I spray painted it black. I couldn't find any black in stock, but I'm sure there's some on Amazon. So I used my level to make sure I was straight once I had it in place where I wanted. I marked it with a pencil, used my wooden drill bit to drill out those 2 spots, and then screwed it into place. And that's it. Okay, you guys, that is it. That covers how I mounted this barn door to the ceiling with the slide. Works out really well. It's nice and smooth. Kids can open and close it with no problem. And that is video number 3 in this 4-part series. Stay tuned. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the little bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, because my part 4 for this playroom series is gonna be so fun. I'm working on it right now. It's gonna be the last video for the series, and I'm just really excited about it. I think you guys are gonna love it. So make sure you stay tuned and watch out for that. I'm working on it. I'll get it done as soon as I can. And part 1 is the shelving that went inside this closet. Part 2 is the door itself. Part 3 is the slide, and part 4 is the surprise that is coming. I do want to add a quick little U-bracket to the bottom of this door to keep it from swinging out when the kids open and close it. Should be fairly easy, and I didn't include that in the videos, but I do suggest you put something like that on there just to keep the door a little more steady and secure to the wall. And that would just attach the molding on the floor. But otherwise, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, I have a website, or on Facebook. Thanks so much for tuning in, you guys. You are the best. I'll see you later.